The Cave Talk.
What's going on, friends and family? Welcome to the Cave Talk. I'm joined by guests Jeff Zannetti, and Coach Mike Moor. How you guys doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you for having us.
And then I can't keep out the co-host Malik. I know he's waiting for an introduction.
What's up? I like that microphone, Malik. That's dope.
That's my dad's.
He looks like he's about to announce a boxing match, is what I told him.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Bruce Buffer.
Yeah, Malik Buffer. Hey, what do you guys? I know it's been probably a pretty interesting time for you as far as like business wise too. How has that been throughout the quarantine to kind of stay busy and keep plugging away at what you guys have been doing?
Yeah, definitely a tough time for everyone, right? All businesses are struggling, having a difficult time. But thankfully for us, since our business is virtual, we've been going pretty much business as usual, helping teams, individuals all around the country, whether it be on phone or on, Zoom, Skype, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's been different. Like, just to echo what Gene said, I think I know for me, I travel a lot. And it was different to not be at Fargo or the National Coaches Convention and like that. But just finding ways to be creative, like Gene was saying, and create opportunities to continue to help people get better.
Right. Just for the viewers who don't know who you are, what is it? Can you just do a quick synopsis, Gene, on what you guys do and what you guys are able to accomplish virtually?
Yeah, so obviously as wrestlers, we all know how mental sports are, not just sports, but school, business, our entire lives, right? So basically what we did is with our own experience, with the knowledge of sports psychology, historical examples, and, again, our own personal careers as all Division I wrestlers, all of us here, right, is using sports as a vehicle to build virtue and mental skills, right? Because confidence is confidence, mental toughness is mental toughness, focus is focus, whether you're championship wrestling match, job interview, saying no to drugs or peer pressure, SATs or ACTs, or asking a girl out on a date. Do you believe in yourself or not?
Right.
So we've taken those lessons, we've made that into a systematic mindset program specific to the sport of wrestling. We've translated that to all sports, so we can work with all sports on mindset, which we have from youth right through professional athletes. And then since this whole quarantine, we've actually expanded a more specific focus into the sales world, into business and corporate America. We've worked with these teams, just kind of different people have reached out to us, worked with several sales teams, but now a more deliberate focus, bringing this mindset to corporate America.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's super important that I think that's very overlooked, especially in the in the sports community. I don't think there is another mindset program in the sport of wrestling. And obviously that's where you started and you branched out from there. But you guys are the only ones, correct? As far as my knowledge goes.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of great work with mindset, motivational speaking. There are sports psychologists, plenty of good people. What we tried to do is just make it very down to earth, very practical, very wrestling specific, and building out that systematic program. So there are people doing it, but we're doing it on a much more macro level than probably most are. And it's because we're blessed to have, such a great team behind us. Michigan was one of the first teams we worked with back in, I started doing this in 2008. I've been doing this for 12 years, but when we really formalized things, Michigan was one of our first teams. 5 out of 10 wrestlers were all Americans that year.
Wow. What year was that? 2008, you said?
No. I started doing this in 2008.
Okay.
But the year we worked with Michigan, half their team were all Americans.
Oh, wow. That might have been actually one of the years that I was there. Because I was there in 2000. Because I remember working.
Kuhn's freshman year, right?
Kuhn?
I think it was Kuhn's freshman year, right?
Okay, yeah, because that was I'm in Kuhn's graduating class. So
it was my freshman year when we started.
Was it?
Yeah, it was 2014.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like, well, I've always had like people in my life try to help me mentally in the sport of wrestling because it is such a mental battle. I mean, 99% of the time, the only person that can beat you is yourself, and you hear that hand in hand, from all your mentors, all your coaches. So I was like going into it, I was like, man, I never thought of like having like a program to help me mentally, help my mental fortitude in the sport of wrestling. And it really transitions over into other things too. Like you guys said, you're branching out into business, into the business world. And I've learned that. I know Malik is starting to learn that as a wrestler too. Once you not step away from the sport completely, but once you move on into your next chapter, and it's for Malik and I, it's both business. It's the same concept. You bring a lot of those concepts forward with you. When you're going into a wrestling match and you're preparing for a wrestling match, I'm preparing to take my mortgage exam to become a licensed loan officer. And it's the same sort of like mental fortitude you try to build. I know Malik just passed his Series 7 to telesecurity. So like, it's the same sort of mental, claps for him, but it's the same sort of mental fortitude you have to build. You're preparing for a match, you're preparing for a test, you're preparing for a big sale, you're preparing for a meeting, whatever it is. And it's good to have those tools in the back of your mind. And I know that's, you said that's something that you've been transitioning over into now, the business world of psychology.
Yeah. Well, Jeff started as a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, Malik, how long do you get your Series 7? How long is it valid after, if you don't do the like continuing education? Because I got the Series 7, 63, 65 back in the day, but I think
CEs, I'm pretty sure you have to do your CEs every 2 years. So
I'm done. I'm done, man.
Yeah.
I'm washed up in finance. Sorry.
Hey, you know what? You found success in something else, so that's all that matters,
Yeah. Well, the other funny story there. So my first internship, 2007, my junior year, was at Bear Stearns. So that year, that was the summer that Bear Stearns went under. They went bankrupt. Right?
Oh, it's tough.
$2 a share. Next year, I interned for Lehman Brothers. They go bankrupt that year. So at that point, I was like, I can't be in finance for too long. I'm the kiss of death, I guess, in finance.
Yeah, that's just how it is, man. You never know how the market's gonna go. So
it's a very volatile industry.
And
Risk, high reward.
That's right.
high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're a hedge fund.
That's right. But to it couldn't have been the kiss of death, because there's no way our winning mindset program would be where it is without Jeff. Obviously, both of us co-founders, and Mike being one of our very first mindset coaches, one of the first clubs we worked with, one of our first mindset coaches. He'll tell you later how he left the FBI and he started working with us, and then subsequently worked with basically every team in Michigan, colleges and high schools.
CC, right, Mike? You worked.
What's that? Yeah, I'm with CC going on 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What, Gene, take us back to 2008. What were you doing in 2008 to the point where you decided, okay, well, I need to stop doing whatever I'm doing now, and I need to do this, and I need to pursue wrestling mindset, and I need to do what I've, been destined to do all along?
Well, at that point in time, I knew I wanted to go into sports psychology. I was going for my master's degree in sports psychology at Springfield College in exercise science, right? And I had a mentor, Dr. Rob Gilbert, who's over here in Montclair State, where I did my second master's degree in clinical psych. And he said, you could really start working with athletes and teams right now. You don't have to be a psychologist. You could just say you're an expert because you do know what you're talking about. So I started working with athletes and wrestling clubs and teams at that time. And then Jeff and I formalized this in about, it was 2011, 2012. I think the first year we spoke at the NWCA was, again, 2012, 2013. But Jeff was a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. I was a school psychologist. So we had our benefits and everything. And, an Italian family, you don't have to look for advice. Advice tends to find you. Yeah. And we found a lot of advice at that time. Our parents saying, what are you doing? You have Ivy League degrees. You're going to leave your jobs. But we had a plan, and the benefit is that Jeff has always been very good at all of my many holes, all the many things that I'm not that good at. So he took care of all the social media, all the back office work, all the financing, and my job was mainly curriculum design, sales, doing the speeches and everything. And then of course Mike jumped in also when he started doing he was our second mindset coach to start working with teams. Jeff started working with individuals. So it was pretty much around 2012 we formalized it. We said we were running a different business at the time called Z Fanatical Fitness, which was a high intensity wrestling style workout that we were doing at different gyms. in the tri-state area, basically. And we said, well, why don't we transition more to the sport of wrestling? So Jeff came up with the name Wrestling Mindset. He said, we're not calling it psychology or peak performance because it's going to sound weak. We want it to sound tougher. So we used the colors black and gold. We went with Wrestling Mindset, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. That doesn't have anything to do with Iowa, though, black and gold, right?
It has everything to do with Iowa. We were big, competitors supreme. We watched the brands thing. So yeah, truth be told, that is why we went with the black and gold.
Yeah.
The real elephant in the room is that we're big Notre Dame college football fans. So we could all agree we're Notre Dame fans here, right?
No.
Yeah, I'm a big Notre Dame fan.
No, definitely not.
Touchdown
Not here.
Jesus.
Well, how about this year? There's no Big Ten football, so you got to go Notre Dame in the ACC, right?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that I could get myself to root for Notre Dame.
I love Rudy. I love Notre Dame. I don't know about Jordan.
There we go.
Malik's a bandwagon fan. He'll just jump on
this guy,
with everybody, with anybody.
Yeah, I love the Toronto Raptors.
Liking Notre Dame does not make you a bandwagon fan, because you know what? They're not doing all that great.
Yeah, they're not. If you're an Alabama fan, then maybe.
That brings up an interesting perspective too that I just thought about. With the quarantine and how they're canceling competitions, and with COVID, the results of COVID. How is that? Have you guys been able to put a plan together for athletes with like keeping their mindset focused on being competitive during times when you're not allowed to be?
Go ahead, Mike, you could take it.
Sure. So, really it's business as usual. I think there are some teams that signed up immediately when COVID hit. So let's take Michigan, for example. Mario Flores' club at Michigan Revolution, they immediately signed up for 24 straight workshops. So I see them every week. So like, hey, we're going to take advantage and seek opportunity in this adversity and make the most of this time. And, any other teams that we've worked with, it's just a matter of maybe the content of the conversation has changed a little bit. In the beginning, it was very much like, how do you handle COVID? How do you make the most of it? Don't try to survive, try to thrive. But at this point, like, we've all settled into a routine that things aren't going to go back the way that they are even when we start. So let's just continue to train the way that we were. Essentially, like I said, different lens, same training platform. So there are a lot of people that like jumped on this as opportunity. There are other people that just continued status quo. So yeah, like I said, really not much has changed for us, with the exception of we're not seeing as many people in person as we once was. So realistically, even in some senses, hey, there's no competition for you this fall. Okay, great. Why don't we take this as an opportunity to double down on your mental game? So you're not, instead of focused on competing every weekend, let's focus on getting better. Because listen, we're going to compete. If it's not this year, you will compete next year. So don't just throw the season up in the air and say, screw it, I guess we lost a year. No one's doing that. And as well as I do, there are rooms in Michigan that have been working just as hard. They found ways. People have barns. You make it work. And recently said it best. Corona, COVID, whatever you want to call it, COVID just COVID exaggerated who you already are. If you were a bum, you made excuses and you found reasons to not get better. If you were a go-getter, you went and got. And you figured it out and you found a way, and you probably got better than you ever have.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot there. I think it was on Miles's episode. I don't know if Malik remembers or not, but we talked about that exact thing. It was the fact that COVID exposes a lot of truth to a lot of people on their personality, on their mental fortitude. Because it's really easy, like you said, okay, well, I'm just going to accept that we're not allowed to go anywhere. We're not allowed to compete. And then I'm just going to be a bum and just sit around, for lack of better terms. You know what I mean? And then you have a lot of other people that are like, it made them hungrier. I mean, there's guys that were coming in. I have a little gym that I built in my garage where this whole podcast started off of, actually. But I put a gym together in my garage back in January before I knew COVID was even going to hit or anything, just because I wanted to have a workout place in my own house. And I had guys like Daringer and Miles and Dom Abinator coming over when it was very strict and like you weren't allowed to go anywhere. And they were busting their ass just as hard as they were if they were training in the middle of a season.
Is that where I saw Cam at like Cam and Edmonds and Gilcher sometimes coming?
Yeah. That was at my place. Yeah, that was at my place
cave.
in the garage. Yeah, the cave. Yeah, that's that just exposes those true personalities of those guys. They're hammers. You know what I mean? They want to get better and they'll find a way. I know that Miles and Daringer and Dom, they were saying that Sergey was having them train in the park for a while just because that's the only place they were able to. They were just they were shadow wrestling and pummeling in the park. So it's like these young athletes and even senior level athletes figuring out ways to train during this difficult time. It exposes their true personality and their true inner drive to succeed.
I think all of us can agree that when COVID hit, those of us all being high level people in different fields, our first thought was like, if we do this right, we're going to come out better than we came in. This is like, so as an athlete, this is a unique opportunity. Like, hey man, you know your competitions. Some of them is going to like kind of slow down. We're going to ramp up. So some people saw like a lot of opportunity. And then, you know, there's the other sets of people, the people that did the minimum and the people that did nothing. But I think all of your family members and, you know, us as in a business and people that we know, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to train 2-3 times a day or to build this side of the business or to get this certification. So like you said, and like Reese said, and like, you know, Miles said, COVID just exaggerated who you were. Right. And some of us became kind of superhuman.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of business, wrestlers in business, the organization, that's something that you guys are pretty familiar with too. I know you said we talked recently before we were going to set up the episode. Yeah.
No.
You guys had a great opportunity through wrestlers in business to help grow the wrestling mindset, correct?
That's what got us our big start. So Jeff, as a financial advisor, got involved in wrestlers in business, linked up with John Licata, and he connected us over with Moor at NWCA.
Yeah, Moor. Yeah, he started wrestlers in business. Yeah.
Right. So between John Licata and Moor, we wound up going and speaking at the National Wrestling Coaches Convention, and that's how we started tracking down a lot of these college coaches, and that's what basically got us started. So it definitely poured gasoline on the fire. So we're big proponents of wrestlers in business, and we strongly recommend that for everyone.
Yeah, there's Malik, your dad's pretty involved in that.
He opened up the Michigan chapter.
Yeah, we just had an event, I think last year in Ann Arbor. It was kind of one of the inaugural events for wrestlers in business.
I just reached out to your dad about that today, Malik, about getting involved. So Mike Moore reached out about getting a head of the chapter of Philadelphia. Apparently they have a very good board there, but they don't have somebody who's going to take on as the head of the chapter. And one of our guys is looking into it seriously. So I'm just trying to find out what that entails, how many times you guys meet. I mean, at Michigan, how often did you guys meet? How many meetings, like how many networking events?
I'm not really sure. I know that there was a couple last year, and then COVID hit. So I would assume a couple more this year too. But I think more of put a better pinpoint on it. I think it's more of the fact of just opening the network in general, just getting the network open and having wrestlers do business with other businessmen. I mean, the meetings were nice. Like the one at Jordan, you went to the one at, where was it?
That was at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Buffalo Wild Wings. I think, my dad put it together. You would have to ask him. He knows a lot more than I am. I'm a member, but he would know what that entails. And even if you're not the guy who, like, say you have interest in, you know, opening up the chapter, you don't have to be the guy who's going to manage everything, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, it's the same thing in business as we move into corporate and sales teams. Do we look at the financial reports and find out which businesses are struggling and reach out to them? No, we reach out to people who are sales managers, who are wrestlers, right? So the conversation.
Exactly.
75% about wrestling, 25% about business, and you enjoy doing it too. So it's better for business, and it's just more enjoyable overall. So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100%.
What's your take on on like the Wrestlers in Business Network being more about who you know than what you know? Because there's a lot of testimonials that I can relate to where just having the right connection has been able to get your foot into the door, even if you might be less qualified than the person that's standing next to you. And how important is that with
it's
wrestlers?
Always a little bit of both. Of course, you'd have to say, as salespeople, it is who you know. But if you don't know something, you're going to get exposed real quick. I mean, people are savvy. People can sniff out if you're not sincere. You better know something too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Especially in the securities industry, man. You can't BS your way around that, man. You gotta know your stuff. So.
No, but I definitely think like if you're going into right, I'm not saying that you're going to go into securities and you're a construction worker and you know nothing about
Jordan, I agree with you though. But you're right.
But the Wrestlers in Business Network, I mean, you got guys like, I'm not just saying it because he's my uncle, but you got guys like Mike Amin who is very savvy in the business industry, and guys like, and even guys like my father who's savvy in the housing market and the housing industry, knows realtors from all across the state. So it's like you got all these connections in a wrestling, and because wrestling's already such a small knit community. I mean, I went on a cruise probably 5 years ago on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and I was on that surf, that artificial surfing thing that shoots waves up and you're in a boogie board. Yeah. They had one of those on the cruise ship, and I was standing in line, and the guy behind me like taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Hey, are you a wrestler?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I can kind of tell by your ear a little bit." He's like, "Are you an Amin?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was some random guy from Louisiana, and they don't really have, I haven't heard from many people from Louisiana in wrestling. So like, but he knew us from watching us at Super 32 in Ohio when we were younger. His son wrestled on one of our charts. I think it was on Malik's chart, but he continued to follow us and throughout all of our careers. And it's just like, that's so random on a cruise ship. You know, you got the whole United States to go on that cruise ship, and it's just a random person taps you on the shoulder. So it just proves how tight knit and how close the wrestling community is. Yeah. You have an opportunity where you have all of these high class businessmen that have moved on and transitioned from the sport of wrestling and were very successful in it, and then move into business and are equally or even more successful in that realm. And they're giving these young wrestlers opportunities to come out of college and find an identity. Because I mean, I don't know how you guys feel on it, but there is a lot of college wrestlers that they wrestled their whole lives, right? You can relate to this. You wrestle for years and years and years, and that's sort of becomes all you know. And then you go to college, and a lot of us aren't going to continue on and wrestle in the Olympics, very small percentage. You struggle to find your identity after you graduate. And after you move on from college to the business world or what you call adult life. And it's like, you have such an aggressive mindset as a wrestler to want to compete, to want to win, to want to be the best. And then you lose your identity because you don't have wrestling anymore. And you're like, well, shit, what do I do now with this great mindset? And I can't figure out what to do with all of these tools and you know, the things that I've learned from wrestling. So something like the Wrestlers in Business, to me, I know I'm sitting here gassing it up, but it gives wrestlers such a great opportunity to present themselves and move on and create an identity.
Are they involved in colleges? I don't remember ever interacting.
No, I don't know. I think with NCAA regulations and stuff, I don't really know how that works. I'm not sure.
I hear they're working on that. I hear they're working on like
really
within wrestling.
Good.
It's going to try
it. So.
There's probably a lot of red tape, like you said, with recruiting and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. The NCAA always wants to regulate everything, man.
I've heard that they were putting it together right before the virus, and that kind of slowed things down. But that would make sense, right? And there's businesses that are doing it. We had in our leadership clinic, Joe Galli. He's the CEO of Tektronic, which owns Milwaukee Tools, Ryobi, Hoover, and like 12 different other brands. It's a big-time CEO, and they hire a ton of wrestlers right out of college. You know, so it's
smart.
But it's not everyone, right? You have to transfer those skills, otherwise it's meaningless. Otherwise, every single wrestler would be rich and would be a CEO of a company, right?
What sort? Go ahead, Gene. You said you were going to say something.
That was really what Jeff said, that the lessons have to transfer over. And that's why it's so important that when we come in, we make it very explicit that wrestling is that vehicle to build the virtue, to build the mental skills, to now apply to your business, your career, and your family life. Because that's why you do see, like you said, wrestlers finish college, they have all this horsepower, no room to gallop.
Yeah.
Some of them hit the business world full steam ahead, and they become very successful.
Yeah.
Like the wrestling community is very tight-knit. Everyone knows wrestlers are the hardest workers. So as long as they've internalized the mental skills and that virtue, they will be successful later on. So it's our job just to make the training explicit so they know the tools that are in their tool shelf and when to use it.
Yeah. Jake Herbert said this, and actually a couple years ago when I talked to him. And Jake, for those who don't know Jake's in the real estate market now. He was an Olympian, I think, back in 2012.
Yep.
Actually before then, way before then. Now I'm thinking, I think it was something around like 2004. But Jake actually gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I've had in my life, and he said to me, "Is the hardest day of your life is going to be the day after you accomplish your goal." And that, I feel like a lot of wrestlers have that after they finish college.
A lot of athletes have that, I feel like.
Yeah. What the hell do I do now? I mean, Michael Phelps is dealing with it. All these Olympic gold medals are dealing with it. I had this sport the rest of my life and taught me all these lessons. And like what Gene was saying, that's where they come in and they tell you, you have all this good information, all these lessons that you turn. Now let's convert it into something else and move on with your life. So
this is well documented. It's called post-Olympic blues. Valentin Kalika spoke about this with Helen Maroulis on Flow Wrestling. If you pull up that video, this is also common across other fields. Post-PhD blues. After these doctors have worked so hard to get those initials at the end of their last name, then they get the degree, they finish their thesis or their dissertation, and now they're depressed. Yeah. Why? Because a lot of times they're not seeing what goes beyond that. They're not seeing the big picture. They get so sucked into the micro details. And to an extent, it is important that they get sucked into it, but they have to maintain the perspective. That's why we're constantly nudging them on the back saying, yes, hyper-focus, but see the big picture.
Yeah. What are some good practices for, because I know a handful, I can name 10. I'm not going to, but I can name 10 athletes right now that I know personally that are struggling to figure out what the hell they're going to do when they graduate. They're seniors, they're entering into their senior year, and they don't know. Heck, I didn't even know. I had no clue until about a year ago what I actually wanted to get into. I was working 3-4 different jobs. So what pieces of advice, and this is open for conversation for everybody, do you have for these young athletes moving on and trying to figure out their next identity to kind of not battle mentally with themselves?
Are they hard workers? Can they sell? They should come work for us.
There you go. Wrestling mindset, recruit. There you go.
That's the businessman in Eugene.
Yeah.
Right.
Recruiter. I mean, I think everyone should go around and think and say, I think that'd be a cool thing. Everyone, has different advice, so you can't get the corner of all good ideas. So I think maybe Gene start and then we can move around.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is so how they should find their career, what they need to do now. So it's back to goal setting, right? Yeah. What's their purpose? The most important goal setting lesson is that your purpose is more important than your goal. And we address that in goal setting week 1. That's not week 5. That's right away. What's your purpose? Mm-hmm. Your purpose is going to dictate what you do. And generally speaking, the gifts you've been given, your passions, that's going to lead you. Your likes and even your dislikes, the things you can't stand doing, generally that's maybe something you should be moving away from. So knowing what you're passionate about, knowing what you're good at, knowing what the purpose is, and moving in that direction. So it's just taking that same kind of goal setting, that same kind of action planning, and now applying it to your career. What were you built for?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, you want to go next?
You're muted, Jeff.
Yeah. I'll go. I would say I'd write it down, right? Write down what am I good at and what do I enjoy doing? And it might take a little bit of time, right? Because you might not fall right into the perfect career right away. So you might actually take on a job to acquire some skills. Something within sales is great because if you start a business, like you're always selling, whether you're selling a product, a service, or yourself, an interview. So if in doubt, like get into sales, learn some skills right away, find out what you're good at, find out what you like. And I think that's an important thing. What are your strengths? And if you can make money doing it and you enjoy it, you're going to figure it out if you work hard, right?
Right.
Yeah. Then Mike?
Sure. So a lot of people ask me how I decided or how I ended up in the FBI, and you can't see, but there's a picture of 9/11, a bunch of 9/11 pictures behind me. I grew up a native New Yorker, and I was literally, when 9/11 happened, I was a junior in high school, and we were going through the statistics class that we had to do this career research project. Figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. How awesome of our statistics teacher to think to do that as a junior in high school. Like, let's figure out like what you want to do with the rest of your life. So we took a career aptitude test to figure out what your skills are, and then it gave you suggested careers. So I think that's something, I don't know if schools still do that. What that revealed for me was like really good critical thinker, good at analysis. There were a handful of other skills that led me to lawyer, law enforcement, this or that. And ultimately there's two things that like guided me, and one of them goes straight back to Gene, what Gene said. And I chose my career path based on like what I wanted out of it. And like, I didn't know what the career I wanted was, but I know what I wanted out of it. I wanted something that was hard to get. I wanted something that I'd be very proud of. I wanted something that made an impact, and I wanted something that like woke my butt up to work every morning. That like, all right, let's go. Like obviously something I'm passionate about. So when I'm analyzing like, okay, what are the skills that my aptitude test have? What are my interests? And then like, where does that meet with my why? Like, I didn't pick the career on what looks cool. What do I want to get out of it? What are the skills that I have? And then let me apply that to like ultimately what I want. And something that helped me figuring that out, you know, I'm literally in the middle of this project, and then September 11, 2001, in that same year, 9/11 happens, and I'm still like unsure of what I'm going to do with my life. And then I see Rudy Giuliani and the FBI director at the time, Robert Mueller, walking through Ground Zero. And I was like, that guy, what that guy does and what that organization does, that's what I want. Because I was like, I don't know, I don't want to be a cop. I don't want to write tickets. I want to be a detective, but I don't want to be a cop first. You know, I want to be a surgeon. I want to be an epidemiologist. But I don't want to be in charge if someone lives or dies on a daily basis. Right? I was like, well, I want to be a lawyer. Well, I have all the skills to be a lawyer, but if I want to make money, I got to defend guilty people, and I'm not necessarily about that life. So knowing my why helped point me in the right direction. 9/11 narrowed my focus. Now fast forward, like I hope people that are watching this, my ability to figure out what career I wanted through that process became very helpful in figuring out later in my life, like what relationships to choose to pursue, professional and personal. I got to know what I need. I got to know what I can't have, and I got to know what I'm willing to compromise on.
Yep.
So, like, I'm not married, so like clearly I haven't figured it all out yet, but I figured out how to waste a lot less time. So I feel like, long story short, that career aptitude test, figuring out what genes, figuring out your why, and then asking yourself simple questions, whether it be relationships in life, what career that you want, like you don't wait till your junior year to start asking yourself this question of college or college. Don't waste your time on all these internships, just like you don't want 25 first dates.
Yeah.
Right. You should know going into an opportunity if this is something you're willing to put your time in. Because if I can check a lot of boxes, then all right, wholeheartedly, I'm willing to invest in that opportunity. Ultimately, that's what led me to leave my job to work for Wrestling Mindset. Was like it checked a lot of the boxes for me. Like I don't want to. I mean, less than 1% of people get this job. And like, I believe in this, but like, I don't know, I'm not sure. But like, I really want to have a career in wrestling. I don't know, I'm not sure. And, you know, I had to ask myself, like, what were the same questions that led me to want to be in the FBI? I want to make a difference. I want to do something I'm proud to say that I do. And, you know, where's my heart? In counterintelligence or in wrestling? Right? And I loved my job. I liked my job, but I love wrestling. So ultimately, like, we can get into the story another time, but ultimately, like, when it came for me to give my 2 weeks notice, you know, a handful of things had to happen, but answering those questions is what helped me leave a very stable, sure, cush career that I was proud of to take a chance on something that I really believed in.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add that there's prudence involved.
Hey, we got a special guest.
Hello.
I
Hey, what's up, Mike? How's it going?
And I knew you guys were going to be on, and I just wanted to give you guys both a huge shout out, man. I follow all your posts and the work that you guys are doing for the sport of wrestling and for corporations, and you're doing just an awesome job. Congrats. It's great to have and see you guys on with these guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Thank you for connecting us. We appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Malik hijacked my office. So anyway,
Wonder it looks
those
so
are my
nice.
trophies.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Those are my trophies.
That's funny.
What were you gonna say, Jeff?
We
Yeah, I was
hijacked
gonna
her
add-
dad's office when we're at the house too, but there are trophies.
Yeah, there are younger brother who's not on the call. They're his trophies, not ours.
Yeah. It's always a younger brother, huh?
Right.
That's right. I was going to add, there's got to be a degree of prudence, right? We're not saying that you just have a good job and you just walk away, right? We had a path. So I was a financial advisor. Gene was a school psychologist. We were doing this on the side. We were building things up. We were having some success. And then in 2013, that's when we pulled the trigger and we said, we're going all in. Same thing with Mike. He didn't just leave the FBI. He was a mindset coach for a year. He started to get involved in sales. He saw a path to success.
Yep.
And, pulled the trigger and went in full time. So it's, we're not advocating for being foolish, but, prudence and waiting for a good opportunity. But at some point, you got to pull the trigger.
Yeah, it's more of an educated kind of it's a decision, but it's kind of an educated guess because you don't know what's going to come out of the situation, right? And it's just like you've crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, and you're like, okay, now it's time to pull the trigger. Mike, how was it? I mean, it's got to be difficult to leave any sort of job, but I can't imagine when you're in the FBI, which, like you said, less than 1% of people get that job, right? So your whole life you've accomplished a less than 1% achievement by moving on to wrestling at the next level and then moving on from wrestling and then going into the FBI. So you've always been achieving success at rates that a lot of people don't achieve it. So one, getting into the FBI, that had to have been such a eye-opening experience. I can't even imagine. And then two, leaving all of that behind and saying, now I'm going to pull the trigger with wrestling mindset. This is where my heart is. This is where I think that I'm going to move on to. Your mental fortitude speaks for itself. No wonder why you're a mindset coach, because you've been doing it seems like your whole life. So how did that work out for you?
Yeah. So, I felt very proud of myself that I feel like I can literally do anything. When I got into the FBI, I was like, wow, this is what I wanted, but this was such an achievement. I feel like I could pretty much do anything at that point. It's one of those things where, how do I say it? It was proof to me. I just posted on Instagram that the picture of me on my first day at the FBI, that's my forever picture. Yeah, that's my forever picture that you could do anything, whatever, no matter what anybody tells you, you can do anything that you want. And, so achieving that was obviously very important to me, but showed me that if I really set my mind to something, I truly can achieve it, not just in wrestling that has a lot of physical work attached to it, but in the real world, right? When it really counts.
Did you have a lot of people that were on the, telling you that you weren't going to probably be able to get into the FBI?
They were telling me that think of this as the long game, be a cop first, do something else first. Don't set this focus on I gotta be in the FBI. And I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do. I'm interested. I wanted to work in federal law enforcement, right? That was the goal. So it wasn't necessarily just the FBI. It was federal law enforcement or national intelligence. So I had relationships with the CIA, Secret Service, things that I was pursuing. I would have been fine doing any of those, right? It was the federal law enforcement route. And once I achieved that, let's fast forward. I learned a lot. It really grew me up. I was in Washington, D.C., the #1 place in the country to work for the FBI. I was 22. I was the youngest member of the entire field office. I learned a lot of hard lessons. I learned a lot of great lessons. I got a lot of great training. When it came to leaving, it was probably, when I describe it, at that time in my life, the best day of the happiest that I'd ever been in my life was the day that I walked in. And then the
22.
second happiest day of my life was the day that I walked out.
How old
Not
were you?
because, how old was I?
Yeah, when you left.
I was 22 when I got in, and I was 29 when I got out.
Oh, wow. So you weren't just there
7
for a hot
years.
second. You were there for a while.
7
Almost a
years,
decade.
yeah.
Yeah, almost a decade.
Yeah, I was there for, I went through, so I came across wrestling mindset. I don't know if people know this. I was a client, right?
Wow.
I had 13 kids in the state finals. 9 of them should have won. Only 4 of them did. 5 just crapped the bed, and they knew exactly what to do. Physically, mentally, took all this time. I had this background where I felt like I could help them, and 5 just didn't show up. And I'm like scratching my head trying to figure out like what am I missing? And what we were missing was I gave them really good advice, but there wasn't a process behind it. So some of those kids took that advice and shined. Other ones, like they knew what they needed to do, but they didn't do it. What were they missing? They were focused on the wrong things, right? So I searched for a solution. Wrestling Mindset helped my club. I saw it work for me. I started coaching for them. This is while I'm at the FBI, right? So I have my wrestling club here in Houston because this is where I moved after DC. So I'm coaching wrestling. I'm like, it doesn't matter what I'm going to teach them technically. This is the number one reason they're failing. And I can't systematically address their problem. I need to find a system. So I sought out Jeff and Gene. They helped a lot of my wrestlers. We had great results. That grew into, you really understand the stuff. Do you want us to train you as a mindset coach? I said, heck yeah. That grew and grew. And then all of a sudden, the Olympic team starts calling. UFC fighters start calling. Division I colleges start calling. Kyvan Gatson pins Kyle Snyder and talks about ice cream, which we can trace back to one of his worksheets. It wasn't just something I believed in that worked for my kids. It was something that was really translating at a very high level.
Right.
And so
it was even talked about on Joe Rogan's episode for a second. I forget. Askren was on there. Yeah. I mean, he asked about it. So,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Do you guys remember that day when you woke up to 300 emails?
Yeah. I was looking at our contact forms and I was like, it's like, what's the source? JRE. I wasn't tuned into the Joe Rogan, whatever episode. I was like, experience. I was like, what is this? And then like 5 of them come in. I started searching it. I was like, oh, Joe Rogan. And then I look for the episode and I find it. Yeah, that was a good week for us.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So it brought you guys in some referrals just from that episode.
Yeah, a ton of leads.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of them closed, right? But a lot of first heard of us, and it was definitely big in MMA. And Mike takes most of our martial arts clients and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So better than us closed, but yeah, it was great for us. We got after the.
If I had to pick, but if I had to pick which one that I want, whether it's the Joe Rogan experience or that day, you guys think about the Joe Rogan experience. I think about that day we first talked to Mike Moore. I remember where we were that day. We were in the car, Jeff and I, on the way to St. Peter's Prep to work with their sports teams. And I remember we spoke to you on the phone. And so that, again, was definitely one of the biggest days for our company because obviously together, us, Mike, of course, our general manager, Jake Hunter, who we mentioned before, not by name. He's the guy who might be the head of Beat the Streets Philadelphia. We brought all of our talents together, all of our hard work and hustle, and we supernova exploded it together and really took it to the next level with their help.
Yeah. That's that's got to be such a rewarding feeling knowing that like you took a risk and you left what was comfortable, what was already established, and then you built up this program that you really had a lot of passion for. And a lot of heart and emotion invested into. And then now it's like, well, we can actually do something with this. I'm sure that gave you guys motivation to continue to steamroll forward.
Oh, absolutely. And just having the team, we always had mentors. We always worked with a group called SCORE, which is a small business mentorship program. We drive into the city every few months. They would give us that mentorship. I had Dr. Gilbert, who was Montclair State, who I spoke about before, who was a sports psychology professor.
So you guys have had your own mentors throughout all of this too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Plus, we're constantly reading business books. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I feel like it's important. Even the biggest CEOs, you look like Warren Buffett. They have advisors. They have people. If you're not constantly seeking advice from somebody who's better than you, then what are you doing? You don't have the corner of all great ideas. So.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
if you think you have all the answers, it means you got to ask better questions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yep. Go ahead.
Gene. Just having the team with us that I look at Jeff and Jake. I mean, of course, everyone has different talents, different strengths, but you got me and Mike who were a certain way. You got Jeff and Jake who were another way. So that really balances it out. Yet all of us have an identical vision. We all have an identical work ethic. Like we've put in some of our best years and then, some of our most successful years, and none of us are satisfied. We're all, you know how it is after a wrestling match. You didn't get the major, you didn't get the tech.
Yeah.
Come off that, everyone says great match, and we're like, what the heck? We could have done a lot better.
Right.
So all together, that really helps. But it goes back to, like Jeff said, put the pen to paper. Like Mike said, he was able to actually study this or figure out what he wanted to do as a junior in high school. So start young, thinking about what kind of career you want to get into. Put it down on paper. Don't take jobs. Like Jeff said, don't take jobs, your first few jobs, just to make money. Build a skill set. Learn things that you're actually going to use in the future. What's the difference if you're making $5 an hour, $10 or $20 when you're 16, 17 years old?
100%.
Learn some life skills, so then when you're ready to be turned loose later, you're ready to go. So that becomes important. Having a mentor. Like, I knew the fields I wanted to go into. I spoke to those people. Business, we were reading business books. Even though my classes were in psychology, I was also taking business classes, which I was not strong at. That brought my QM way down, but I knew I needed that if I wanted to own a business in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So doing things like that becomes critical. And again, mindset, having that mentor, that's why we set that up. So if people don't know who to turn to, right, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters or your mindset coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say there's a Friedrich Nietzsche quote, when you know your why, you'll suffer through any how. And like, I think we need to change the dynamic. So just like wrestling mindset has changed the dynamic of how most wrestling teams, especially and now other sports and businesses, approach the mental side of the game. You need a coach. It needs to be a process. It can't be advice. Like, why do I work with CC? Mitch Hancock's arguably, if not one of the best high school coaches in the country.
Yep.
He says a lot of great advice. Sometimes they need to hear it from somebody else with a process. Why is he so good? Because I'm at the Michigan Coaches Convention, and he comes up to me to pick my brain. I'm like, you're the best coach in the room. You want my advice? He's like, well, yeah, I mean, you're the expert in the area. So like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And Kyler Sanderson, I met him under the same circumstances. So he became a very, very good friend of mine, and I met him at Ironman. He walks up to me, and he's like, "Your mindset, Mike, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, I'm Kyler." I'm like, "I know who you are." And he's like, "Hey, I have some questions for you. Do you mind if we sit down and talk about them?" And I'm like thinking he's just got some ideas. No, the dude pulled out a pen and paper with pre-written questions. Two-time Division I All-American, youngest of 4 number 1 kids in the country, whose brother's arguably one of the best wrestling coaches in the country forever, sits down and asks me a bunch of questions. And that's when I've met all of his family members now, with the exception of Cody. They're all the same way. Their dad's the same way. I do camp. I come out with, teaching wrestling mindset at their camp every year in Utah. And the first year I did a parent and coaches Q&A. Guess who asked the most questions at the Q&A?
Him.
Kale's dad.
I was going to say that the father.
If you ask all of them, why are you so good? Dad. Well, Dad, why are you so good? And I asked him all these questions. It had this much to do with wrestling and this much to do with the way that they approach the sport. Like, podcast for another time. But like, that's my point is that, that's the type of person that they were. So going back to when you know your why, you'll suffer through any how, or you'll figure out how. I think we need to change the dynamic of how we approach careers. We look at college as let's just figure it out. Well, why do you think most kids like BS half their college experience? Like, I don't know, it's college. Like, I'm supposed to mess up and figure it out. Yes, we're supposed to make mistakes. High school needs to be where you get a direction, college, or a vision. College should give you a direction. But I knew exactly what my why was by junior in high school. Literally everything I did or didn't do was under the vision of I want to be in federal law enforcement within the next 5 to 7 years. So for example, being a Division I athlete, you can't do drugs, but also kids in college do drugs all the time that are Division I athletes, and they make one mistake. Maybe they get drug tested, maybe they not. At the time, if you smoked weed, you couldn't apply for the FBI for 7 years.
Wow.
One night. I get polygraphed on it. One night changed the trajectory of my whole life. So moral of the story is that I think we need to shift the dynamic in choosing careers and stuff, shift it and give kids a requirement to start having some sort of vision, career type classes in high school. Stop waiting until your junior year of college. Your junior year of college is to get the internships that you want, and you'll get the crap jobs that are $6 to $10 an hour because it'll ultimately help you down the road. But we need to start earlier. Just like mindset needs to be not an auxiliary thing, it needs to be a requirement for every sport, every business to train it.
Yeah, exactly.
Even at the University of Michigan, there's a lot of mediocre things going on week one, right? Who said? Was it you, Jordan, or Miles, or Matt?
No, that's Sean Bormat actually said that. And I think Jordan, I think it was your senior year. I think he said welcome week when Sean was first the head coach. Were you on the team?
So actually, I heard this from Donnie Pritzloff my freshman year when Donnie was at Michigan. So when Malik was still in high school, actually, SEC, Donnie, it was welcome week. It was welcome week. We were in Bonna Wrestling Center, which is the training center for the University of Michigan wrestling team. We were all sitting down, and he decided to pull the freshmen aside, which was me, Kuhn, Brian Murphy, Abinator, the whole freshman class of 2013 for Michigan. And Donnie Pritzloff said, you're going into welcome week. There's going to be a lot of mediocre things. There's going to be a lot of average things going on. He's like, but you guys need to realize that when you accepted to be on this Michigan wrestling team, when we sought out to recruit you, we weren't recruiting average, mediocre people. So we want you guys to approach the welcome week. We want you to have fun and enjoy yourselves, but we want you to approach the welcome week with the mindset that you are not mediocre, you are not average, and don't partake in the average and mediocre activities these kids are doing. Because those kids get to wake up the next morning and do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah. No,
we have to wake up the next morning and we have to live with the decisions we made from the following day when we're putting our time and love and blood and sweat and tears into preparation of a sport that we've worked 18 plus years to get to that point.
Absolutely. So important. And we're hitting on this with our kids all the time. We're working with our athletes because a lot of them, they're just thinking wrestling. And we're saying, no, you have to look at the big picture. I'm taking notes as we're going through all this. And like Mike said, we're big proponents of take these personality tests, figure out what careers you match up with. If you don't know that from there still, hit your career service. They might have something like that. They might be able to give you some direction. Don't expect it to just happen and fall on your lap. Just like you need to be aggressive and take shots and go for your turns on top in wrestling, you have to be aggressive for your business and for a career. Of course, as a student, you're sitting in the front row, you're going to your classes, you're asking questions, you're going into your office hours, the professor's office hours, you're going to the writing center. All these resources available, and you need to be hungry. You need to be a go-getter. You need to be a hustler. So that attitude starts in college. Now, that's one part of it, the academics. You also need to be thinking about networking. That's something I think all of us agree that if we could go back in time, we'd have done even a better job networking.
Absolutely.
One of the best things I think I did is me and my roommate, we had a competition who could find more Facebook friends. And this is when it first came out. And that was actually very helpful. It was a helpful thing that we did that because, man, we built up a lot of the sports. We were able to transfer wrestling mindset to lacrosse, to gymnastics, to soccer, mainly from people that I met in college who played other sports. So that becomes a source of capital. It's like a people capital. It's the strength of ties, the strength of ties, right? So you need to be a fierce networker. You need to go to clubs. You need to be part of career fairs. You need to get internships. Don't just sit back. At Penn, we had the Penn Leadership Program. Shout out to Dave Patrick, who we just had on the show, our meeting of the minds, who's the CEO of Charles Schwab. He donated the wrestling room and the number 3 student body campus not athletic center, but gym in the country.
Wow.
Roger Reyna, who was very big with that. So he always had that Penn Leadership Program. Jeff was involved in it as one of the mentors. Getting involved in clubs and hitting up the social media. But you only have one time in your life to go to college. So you really need to harness that. And that's why we're riding our kids equally as hard for that as we are for wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it too, being somebody who's just graduated from college 2 years ago, 2018, there's a lot of people that get stuck in their own funk. And it's like, and this is a question for all three of you. What would you say to somebody who's making those excuses for themselves on why they can't become, why they can't achieve that winning mindset that we're talking about, that we've talked about for the last hour. Because there's a lot of people that are just comfortable with being mediocre and being average, but they still have it in them to be above average, especially these college wrestlers and I keep bringing it back to college wrestling is because what we know, right? But there's a lot of college wrestlers that I know that they sit and they're comfortable with just however things are now. But I don't know if it's because if that's their true personality, or if it's because a lot of people like to be comfortable, right? The human race in general enjoy comfort. So what would you say to those people, to kind of wrap us up here, that are comfortable sitting and being average when they've worked their whole lives in a sport that's above average? How do you get out of that funk? How do you break that?
I'll start. So I feel like the comfort zone, like what I tell my clients, is that the comfort zone is where your goals go to die. Complacency is the death of all success. So that's why the most successful people in business and industry, they're the people that feel like it's never enough. So like Gene was saying, like we all have the same, we can have a great month, but it wasn't enough. We can get the major, but it wasn't the tech. So, like if you're talking to college wrestlers, especially, it should be easy to drink that Kool-Aid. I think if you live life through the lens of opportunity, when you see things as opportunities, you make the most of opportunity. Is college an opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, or is college something where you're just along for the ride? Right? So we're supposed to be in the funk. That's part of the process. Like there's a video I'll recommend that you listen to it if you've never seen it. It's with a rabbi, and it's called How Do Lobsters Grow? And they talk about how lobsters literally grow by growing out of their shell. Discomfort is a stimulus for growth. They literally cannot get to the next level without getting very uncomfortable. So, if you're a collegiate wrestler or you're not, are you okay with being complacent and like letting other people go past you? If you are, then you don't have a lot of love for what you're doing and your why is not very strong. So revisit why you started. What do you love about it? And if you're an athlete, that's why athletes make such great employees. I think collegiate athletes make the best employees. Wrestlers make the best entrepreneurs. I think more than anything, like wrestlers just know that hustle, right? And you believe to bet on yourself. But long story short, like if complacency and being satisfied is where goals go to die. So if someone has like, well, what are your goals? Your goals are this, where you're just comfortable sitting here, like being sorry for yourself. Like if you were down 5-0 and you were sorry for yourself, would that help you score 5 points, or would scoring the next point and winning the next exchange do it? Wrestling is such a vehicle for life, like Gene keeps saying. And through mindset training, if we can teach them to crush the process in wrestling, then it's easy for them to relate and then go ahead and do it in life. Wrestling's a vehicle for life. Life's a vehicle for wrestling. Complacency is where our wrestling and life goals go to die.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll give the short answer. I think Tervel Delagnov said it well. Is the best motivation is doing what you love to do. Right? It's just when I'm doing something that I love to do, then I'm going to be motivated. Right? So part of it is, what is your purpose, and then what do you enjoy doing? Obviously, it's got to be something productive, right? But it's got to be in your heart, right? You can't make somebody love wrestling. You can't make somebody love football. So at the end of the day, it's got to be something. So they got to get back to, why do I want to be good, and what is it that I'm passionate about? And then, as a mindset coach, you're making sure they gear that towards obviously something that's productive, whether it's wrestling or not.
I think that's where you really have to take that next step. You just have to take that next step, and you have to address ultimate reality, because obviously we know having a purpose is better than not having a purpose, right? Everyone agrees with that. So what's your purpose? The difficulty there becomes, well, what if I don't know my purpose? What if I don't think there is a purpose? So then you start to ask yourself these ultimate questions. Is there already a purpose to life that's external to me that I need to conform to? As an example, in wrestling, there's certain fundamentals that every wrestler needs to have. Even though Ben Askren wrestles different than Jake Herbert wrestles than different of all of us, there are still certain fundamentals of wrestling that we all need to conform ourselves to. And then after we conform ourselves to those fundamentals, then we could sprout off and be individuals, right? Same thing with the laws of mathematics. I can't start doing shortcuts and little tricks until I learn the basics. I can't play the piano any which way. I have to conform to the fundamentals, and then I conform my purpose of playing the piano to the fundamentals. Same thing when you talk about your why. Is there an objective purpose to life external to me?
Right.
And that's where you ask these fundamental questions. And that's the real secret. When you look at these high-level teams, you look at Cale Sanderson in Penn State, you look at Tom Ryan, Ohio State, you look at Brands over at Iowa, what do they have in common? Faith-based. Mike Moore told me this. He was saying they all have there's a strong purpose that goes far beyond wrestling, and it's rooted in ultimate reality. That's why everyone shoves God to the side and doesn't want to talk about faith. And you start to see, look at how many people go up and win awards, whether it's rock stars, movie stars, and the first thing is thank God. Now, most people could just dismiss that and say, yeah, that's nice. But when you see it over and over again, high-level achievers in all different areas, you start to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe that's what's powering these people. So their purpose is aligning with the ultimate purpose.
Right.
If that makes sense. So coming from that spot, believing there is a purpose there, I conform to that purpose, you'll have the endless fuel to do that. And that fuel,
Exactly.
we know, is grace.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree anymore. Yeah, I think if you look at the highest of the high in the professional athletes, Olympic athletes, whoever you want to say, highest grade of your sport, whatever it is, Olympic, world level, professional level, it's crazy that the guys who have the most success have a very strong foundation of faith, regardless of what religion it is. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim, doesn't matter if you're Catholic, you're Jewish, Hindu, does not matter. I feel like when you have that belief in a higher being and purpose, you have a purpose in life, and you'll do whatever it is, because on this earth, I guess, well, it depends on what religion you are. You believe that there's something after. There's after. So you feel like I better expend everything I have, and I better give it everything I have, because when it's over, you know what? There's going to be a better plan behind it. So.
Deep into this, spending a lot of time with Kyler when Penn State was on that spree, going eight out of 9 or 9 out of 10, whatever it was, and everyone's like, "How are they beating everybody up like bad? Like nobody understands.
Yeah.
Not even close."
Yeah.
So here's what it is. And being from CC, I've had this conversation with the boys too. Faith is a mental edge. When God is first, wrestling's not. Okay, when your goal is to glorify God with the gifts that He's given you, then it's easy to understand why Penn State guys, like we're just talking about that team. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but people were like, why are these guys having so much fun? Why do they seem so loose? I don't get it. It's because their objective, just like other people who are deep in their faith, they're not worried about outcomes, because you've already learned to surrender that you're not in control of that. I'm not in control of that, but I want to glorify God with the gifts that He gave me. So a 2-1 win when I could have won 10-5 isn't showcasing the gifts that I was given, right? When God is first, wrestling's not. When God's first, family second, school's third, wrestling is some fun thing you do with your friends. So what Penn State talks about in the articles, if you pay attention, they believe gratitude is the mental edge of that team. Gratitude is a very faith-centric concept. It's hard to teach, but if you come from a family where like God is very important, gratitude comes naturally. So practice is an opportunity to get better. I get to practice. I get to compete. Right. And if I lose, I gave everything that I have. I'm disappointed, but like, man, I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to do this. So like traveling so much, and like being with such a good foundation, like learning from Gene and Jeff, like as I traveled and started being around all these high level guys, I'm like, wait, you're all saying stuff, but you've never been in this. You're all saying stuff in common, but you've never been in the same room. Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Snyder, Cale Sanderson, they're all saying the same stuff. So I say that to the CC kids, that you got to understand that as well trained as you are, you're literally in a school where faith is an integral part of your day-to-day in your life. So faith is a mental edge, not just something that you do and talk about on a daily basis. So you're wrestling for a very different purpose than the people that are trying to win a state title. And it's very unique. So I just wanted to share that. And I tell people, you don't have to be religious to be successful, but a lot of successful people have a strong faith in God. Absolutely. You have to have an absolute truth that's bigger than you.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason that mindset principle number 1 is I'm thankful for the opportunity to wrestle. But really, you could fill in the blank there. I'm thankful for the opportunity to practice, to do this podcast, to whatever it may be. And that all comes down to gratitude.
Yeah, that's something that I've actually started practicing. Not faith. I've been faithful for my whole life, but the getting up and saying I get to do this, because
Mhm.
there's it's very easy. I mean, everybody on this call and then everybody listening, when this goes live, can relate to a time in their life where they're like, damn, like I don't want to go to practice. I don't really feel like going to work today. I don't really feel like going outside and cutting the grass. It's 89 degrees outside, or whatever it may be. But if I forget who it was that told me this. It was probably like 2 years ago I started doing this, because there was a time where I got really just really negative. I didn't want to, I was just always complaining about things. And it was like somebody I forget who it was. I would give them credit if I remember, but somebody kind of like smacked me on the head and they're like, listen, you get to do this. Like you're given the opportunity to wake up in the morning with your fingers, your hands, your legs, your feet. You can see, you can hear, you can smell, you can breathe on your own. You're not required to breathe by a machine. You're not getting food pumped through your stomach. You get up and do this. So when you start to live with that attitude and that mental fortitude of you get to go to work, you get to cut the grass, even though it sounds stupid, you get to make your own food, you get to go to work every day and make money to put food on the table.
You get to change diapers.
You get to change diapers. Yeah. That's going to be pretty soon for me. That'd be in the next 2 months. I have my first child coming, but
Congratulations.
Thank you. But when you said that, Mike, it kind of hit home for me. I was like, because that's something I do every day now. When I feel like I'm starting to get negative about something, it's like, okay, well, remember that I get to do this.
Word choice is so important. The words that you use is like the food that you feed your brain.
Absolutely.
So why people don't understand, they think gratitude is about being thankful. That's part of it. Gratitude is seeing things as opportunities. When you see something as an opportunity, you make the most of an opportunity. And when you don't, you're like, ugh. So when you don't wrestle well, like when you don't score points, you're like, ugh, like I won, but like, oh, I don't like that. So when you see everything you do as something you get to do that's an opportunity, you make the most of it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we're starting to approach 7 o'clock, and I don't want to take up too much more of you guys' time. So before we leave, where can everybody that's listening find your social media? We'll start with Gene, Jeff, and then Mike.
Real quick, we got to give a shout out if we can. So
absolutely.
One of our buddies in college, Matt Eveleth, he's fighting pancreatic cancer right now. So if everyone could just at home pray for him, think of him. And I got the band right here, Team Matt. He's the EIWA champ from Penn. He beat Troy Dickerson in the conference finals. He's getting pancreatic cancer.
Damn.
To do it. So please
prayers
pray
up for him, man.
Absolutely.
Yep. Matt Eveleth, great guy. And a lot of people don't realize the year Matt Valeni won his first national title, he only beat Matt Eveleth by 2 points or something like that in the wrestle-off. And that was the weight class up from the weight class that Matt Eveleth wrestled the next year. So he was a stud. But great family, great guy. So we're all praying for him. And
well, Dan Gable said once you wrestle in life, everything else is easy. So hopefully that, I'm sure it won't be an easy route, but if he can achieve what he's achieved, I'm sure that with God on his side, he'd be able to accomplish defeating that. So, yeah, we'll definitely keep him in his prayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to answer your question, though, you can find us wrestlingmindset.com.
Or Z-Winning Mindset.
Or, zwinningmindset.com. And then we have the new business page. It's winningmindsetsolutions.com. So 3 websites there. And then, Wrestling Mindset, everything on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're all over there. So we're pumping out free information. YouTube channel. We have Wrestling Mindset, Winning Mindset, and then Winning Mindset Solutions.
Awesome.
So the way we did that
too. Lots of podcasts, so much content.
Yeah.
So we made it easy for you. We made a link tree. So basically, that's a one-stop shop of our website, podcast, YouTube page, our daily motivation text.
I've seen that.
Yeah, Linktree is great. That's what we're using Linktree now. It kind of puts everything all in one. So what's the Linktree?
There's an answer to that too.
Isn't it on their Instagram?
We want to be able to get, because I know there'll be people that'll be interested, so we want to be able to get them to you.
Link.tr. So the word link, tr.ee/Z Winning Mindset. I can send you the link. Drop it in the show.
And I'll drop it in the description. Absolutely.
It should be under the Instagram for Wrestling Mindset.
That's what I said. That's what I saw.
I think the link is the link tree.
Okay. And
then
we
can't forget Jack Medley, intern for Wrestling Mindset this year, Michigan Wrestling.
that's the guy
Love
to
that
have.
guy,
if you
man.
haven't gotten
That's the
into
guy.
it.
That's the king of mindset at Michigan, man.
Yeah.
That kid freaking is.
I
An
think I
animal.
was talking to you on the phone about that, Jeff,
That's
a
right.
few days ago about how just his mindset is phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
he's influencing all these Michigan wrestlers to go run marathons. These guys, we running it wasn't our favorite thing at Michigan because we always used to do it so much. But he's got these guys running marathons now, which is incredible. So.
Yep, the feedback we got from our general manager Jay Cunner said he's a hard worker, he's a go-getter. So that's
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the night.
Thank
All right,
you.
Jordan. I gotta say one more thing.
Absolutely, go ahead, Malik.
I always gotta say this since it's still going on. So everybody knows, I said it last episode. Lebanon still needs your help, guys. It's going to be a long road ahead. I know it seems like a long time ago that the blast happened, but the rebuilding process is going to take a long time. And there's a link in my bio. I think there's a link in Jordan's as well to help the relief. Anything helps, guys. It's going to be a long road ahead for those families. I know the media doesn't show it, but it's just terrible what's going on right now. So anything helps. So
absolutely. All right, guys. Well, take care, and thank you again for coming on with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Great
thanks,
stuff,
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Cave Talk.